Scientist Alex Hartdegen resides at 1899 in New York City. He is a professor of applied mechanics and engineering at Columbia University who is fixated with the concept of time travel. His radical notions often land him in hot water. He writes letters to Albert Einstein. He is on his way to the park to meet up with his love Emma when he becomes preoccupied by an early riser passing by the park gates. He immediately gains the respect of the motorist who, when filling up, had forgotten to engage the parking brake, which Alexander promptly does when the situation starts to spiral out of hand. Forgetting to bring the flowers, he runs into Emma at the ice rink. As they stroll around the park, Alexander pops the question to Emma. The romantic moment is short-lived, though, as a robber approaches them while brandishing a revolver from adjacent bushes. Alexander tries to stop the thug from stealing Emma's engagement ring, but the pistol fires during the struggle, leaving Emma gravely wounded and dying in Alexander's arms. Alexander works on his time travel equations every waking hour in his laboratory for the following 4 years. He finally succeeds in creating a functional time machine. David Philby, his oldest friend, eventually shows up at the lab to confront Alexander, who then falls into a frenzy as a result of his self-imposed seclusion. In an effort to persuade Alexander to leave the lab and eventually return to a regular life, Philby invites him to dinner. However, Alexander declines and postpones the meal until the following week. After Philby has departed, Alexander says that they wouldn't have had this conversation in a week. Once he has finished building the time machine, he goes back to that night 4 years earlier and stops Emma from meeting his 1899 counterpart. She is escorted out of the park, and after returning home with him in tow, he departs her there so he may go buy some flowers. However, Emma is knocked down and trampled by a horse and carriage outside, despite Alexander having removed her from the robber's threat. The first motor vehicle scared the horses. Alexander is painfully aware that if he stops one way for Emma to die, another will take its place. Disappointed with the prospect, he chooses to travel through time to see if there are any solutions in the future. Time traveling. In 2030, Alexander pauses and discovers that the moon is getting ready for colonization. He stops at the New York Public Library and speaks with holographic, artificially intelligent librarian Vox 114. He is given information on authors like G.Wells, Isaac Asimov, Harlan Ellison, and even one of his own works. But the library lacks any materials on time travel theory because, according to Vox, it is not feasible. Alexander, who is frustrated, queries about the time machine itself and is informed about G.Wells' book. Alexander continues on to the future after finding nothing useful, but 7 years later, in 2037, he encounters a bump when he discovers that the moon mining operation has thrown off the lunar orbit. As a result, the moon is disintegrating and pelting Earth with enormous rocks. 2 military men attempt to arrest him since he is outside a shelter, but he manages to flee. He enters the machine just as the city is being demolished, but is knocked out and misses seeing civilization annihilated. Alexander travels across thousands of years in his time machine. In 802,701 AD, after regaining consciousness, Alexander stops the machine and discovers that society has collapsed into a hunter-gatherer way of life. These survivors, who go by the name Eloi, have built their residences into the face of a cliff on an area that mimics Manhattan. Alexander starts dating Mara, a teacher who is one of the only people who can remember some of the time travelers' now outdated language. He also understands that the moon is now fragmented. The Empire State Building, a Tiffany & Company sign, and a part of tiled panels from Brooklyn Bridge City Hall subway station are among the stone shards and signs that are displayed to Alexander as he is introduced to Eloi culture. While Alex is inspecting the machine after seeing an Eloi memorial for their parents, Mara tells him to go back to his own time and take her younger brother Kalen with him. Suddenly, the Eloi are attacked by Morlocks, monstrous, pale, ape-like creatures that hunt the Eloi for food. The Morlocks capture Mara and carry her off. Trying to find out where she has been taken, Alexander is told that the ghost might know. As it turns out, the Eloi are speaking about Vox 114, the holographic librarian that Alexander had talked to before the destruction of the moon, who is still functioning after all these years. Alexander enters the Morlocks' underground realm with the aid of Vox 114. but he is quickly apprehended and led to a chamber where Mara is imprisoned, and where the Uber Morlock, Jeremy Irons, the leader of the Morlocks, is waiting. According to the Uber Morlock, the Morlocks live in a caste-like society, with each caste, which is practically a separate species in and of itself, playing a specific role in Morlock society. While the hunters Alex has so far encountered were bred to be predators, the ruling caste of this society consists of extremely bright telepaths. The Uber Morlock tries to justify his behavior by asserting that neither he nor his followers are bad. "Who are you to question 800,000 years of evolution?" he inquires. He also implies the existence of other clans like his. Alexander discovers that following the moon's destruction, the Eloi and the Morlocks made the decision to confront the fallout and remain underground, respectively. The Morlocks have discovered and taken his time machine below. Alexander enters the device to flee and propels himself and the Uber Morlock forward in time. Alexander forces him outside the time sphere after they have a disagreement. He sees the Uber Morlock grow old and pass away outside the temporal bubble. As the sky fills the horizon, Alexander slows the vehicle. He has arrived in the year 635,427,810 AD, where the Morlocks have taken complete control of the environment and turned it into a barren wasteland. Alexander goes back in time to save the imprisoned Mara after finally realizing that he can never save Emma. He sets the time machine to go to the future after freeing her and before fleeing. He then uses his pocket watch to block the controls, causing the time machine to fail and explode, resulting in a temporal distortion stream. Just as the Morlocks are killed by the explosion, Alexander and Mara flee. Alexander, who feels trapped in the future, decides to start over with Mara. Vox recounts to the Eloi the tales from his memory as he starts to restore civilization. This final picture is juxtaposed with a scene from 1903 where David Philby visits with Mrs. Watchett, Alexander's ailing housekeeper, before departing and tossing his bowler hat on the street.